in the...
Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting. It is Wednesday, February 25th. Are we in compliance with open meeting laws?
Yes, we are.
Please call the roll.
Right.
Here.
Wyman.
Here?
DeWitt.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Hess.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And this evening we have Joseph Santiago with us, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry. Oh, I won't.
I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. It means a great deal when we have student participation. And we bring certificates for you as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we have the principal of Perry Tippler Middle School, Tyler Mentum. Give us some highlights.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Last Wednesday of February. It's crazy that March is just around the corner. It's going super fast. But one of the reasons why I asked Joe and Emily, who is the other student who could not be here tonight to be a part of this, is they're both phenomenal music students at Tippler Middle School as well. Joseph himself historically was an orchestra player, and last year he talked to Mr. Nutini about picking up an instrument in band. I want to say saxophone. I could be wrong. But fun story with him is that he practiced really hard, has mastered it, and he was one of the only out of a few middle school students to join the Oshkosh Youth Symphony last year, but the first time ever playing a band instrument. So he's been, or maybe flip that, but he's been a phenomenal musician, and he's also a track athlete, so that's a big highlight coming up here too, is that the track season is coming up with wrestling going on. Our kids are eager to get back outside and have a lot of fun. So in terms of things that have been going on, solo and ensembles happen for our music students. They've had wonderful performances, and we've had some winter concerts as well. Upcoming for some school things, we have the Alps Culture Fair coming up, so that's going to be really cool this year. Instead of looking at different states like our 4th and 5th graders have, this year they're looking at different geographical regions, so that's a little bit of a change for them, and they're really excited to showcase some of the new learning they have done. And our Alps Socialist class is looking at some world leaders to present on as well. In terms of other things they're going great at Tippler right now. I think February, everybody's able to say that it's a hard time for student behaviors, right? But we've really taken an emphasis this February to focus on the positives that our students have been doing. And so one of the things that we use at Tippler are called roar cards, which are ways to acknowledge students going above and beyond. And in this week, we have a drawing for some pretty cool prizes. And to help acknowledge the students doing positive behaviors, the teachers who nominate those students have a prize as well, where out of the 3 main prizes, the teachers who wrote those cards get a bonus prep period with myself, our dean, Jerry DeLong, or our counselor, Mr. Casey, subbing in their class. And so teachers have been really eager to write their roar cards, because who doesn't want more time this time of year, right? We also have coming up at the end of March, or right before spring break, our Tiger Game celebration, which is our 2nd annual. So it's kind of a spirit week leading up into spring break, and it's going to help kick off our forward testing season as well. So some of the games that we're going to have going on during lunches will be trivia based, but they're actually going to be forward test practice questions. So kids, I hope the kids are watching, because they don't know that yet, but that's what we're going to be doing with that. So I'm just really happy to see that our spring is going well, and looking forward to seeing what the rest of the school year has for us.
That's great. Any questions for Tyler?
No, I just have a comment, though. It's a fun anecdote also of shout out to some Tippler staff and I think I'm guessing to staff all over the district with the Olympics over the last couple of weeks. I know at Tippler that there were a couple of classrooms where teachers gave up their personal time to allow kids to come in and watch. And in the lunchroom, you guys had the Olympics on, so that they were watching all kinds of stuff. But it was usually done, I think, as far as I could tell, not during instructional time, but they gave up their own personal time, and they got to have some fun, cool time to watch some really awesome athletic events happening.
Yeah, the 8th graders were very into figure skating on one of the days, and when I can't remember what country the gentleman was from, but as he was skating, he missed a little on his routine, and half the lunchroom went, "Oh!" Yeah. So they were locked in. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. That's great. Nice opportunity. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, folks. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
You too.
Dr. Davis, the land acknowledgement?
Yes, as we gather today, we'd like to acknowledge that in Oshkosh, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, who lived along the western shore of Lake Winnebago, Wisconsin's largest freshwater lake entirely within its borders. We acknowledge these indigenous sovereign communities who have stewarded this land throughout the generations and pay respect to their elders, past and present. We welcome the duty and opportunity to share stewardship of these lands.
Thank you. Approval of agenda. Are there any items that someone would like to move in the agenda?
I would like to move several items from the consent agenda so that they may be considered individually.
I think we do that right before the consent
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, I just didn't want to miss out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else prior to that? Okay. Thank you. Agenda will be, we'll move on. Okay, Board President's Report. Recognition of retirement. We have one retiree this evening, and that's Michelle Smith, as Administrative Assistant at Oshkosh West High School. She has been with the district since 1990. Dr. Herzog?
Thank you. I had the privilege of working with Mrs. Smith during my central office working years here. And I've always found her to be very upbeat, very supportive of students and staff, and just a joy to work with. Very positive and sets a very good tone in the West office. I know she will be missed by students, staff, parents, as well as the community, and would like to wish her a long, healthy, and happy retirement. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you very much. And today, for the mission moment, we are lucky enough to have Hannah Chung joining us today. And she's a 2023 graduate of Oshkosh West High School. And you may remember Hannah from her work on the biodigester project that she was in partnership with UW Oshkosh during her senior year at West. She's currently at her third year at MIT and is working on a startup in the education AI field. She's joining us live today from the campus at MIT to talk about the highlights of her Oshkosh area school district and MIT experiences, along with giving a description of her new AI startup. Welcome, Hannah.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here.
Well, let's hear a little bit about what you're doing and how Oshkosh Area School District helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm really honored to be here. I have like a quick little presentation that I can just pull up. I'm assuming I can just screen share. Would that be all right?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, yes. So I'm excited to be back. My name is Hannah Chung. As you mentioned, I'm a 2023 graduate of Oshkosh West, but my entire career I've spent at OASD through K through 12. Specifically, just going through a quick recap of my time there at Oshkosh West, I was the valedictorian for the class of 2023. I was also involved in first robotics competition. Our Oshkosh team waved robotics alongside North High School as well. And I was team captain for that, as well as World Championships Dean's List Award finalist. I helped create my own club at Oshkosh West called the Green Alarm that was based on environmental education. I was also editor-in-chief of the Oshkosh West School newspaper, the Index newspaper, and I was team captain for the girls varsity tennis team. I was also involved in the symphony orchestra as concertmaster, Rotary Club as president, and then, as you mentioned previously, the last time I was here was to present my Earth for Us project, and that was part of my capstone project in collaboration with UWO and Global Academy. So currently how I spend my time is I'm an MIT undergrad. I study computer science, economics, and data science. And I've also created a startup that is backed by Y Combinator, which is one of the fastest and most exciting startup accelerators that I've gotten a chance to be a part of. And then a little bit about my time at MIT since leaving OASD. I've become vice president of my class at MIT. I'm part of a business consulting group called MIT Consulting Group, and I work with a lot of different Fortune 500 companies to help solve business problems. I'm a student researcher at the MIT Environmental Solutions Initiative, and we recently just published our first in-depth study that measures the carbon footprint in the live music industry, and we're lucky enough to do that in collaboration with the global band Coldplay and Warner Bros. Records. I've also spent my last summer at the World Bank as a summer financial analyst, and I was working a bit in auction theory down in DC. And I've also dabbled a bit in high frequency trading in New York City with Virtue Financial. And then sort of towards my more education side, I've been a part of MIT Global Teaching Labs as a curriculum developer. So I've had the chance to travel to different countries abroad and kind of help out the K through 12 education scene over there. So I've taught AI from robotics to North Korean refugee students in Seoul, South Korea. And I've also recently come back from the Kingdom of Bahrain, where I was helping to teach project-based interactive AI learning. And recently, those kind of experiences have accumulated in me creating my startup now called Trust AI, where I'm the co-founder and the CEO. But yeah, I just want to say, like, as mentioning throughout all these projects, I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from OASD is really the project-based learning and understanding that even if I'm a student, I'm still in school, I still have the ability to impact a lot of people. I think that was a very inspiring perspective. And coming to MIT, I think it was one of the things that made me a differentiator at most amongst my peers. Everybody's coming from a lot of different institutions, very nice institutions from high school, and we're all coming to MIT. But one thing I think that made me stand out within even the MIT population was having that experience of project-based learning, really getting into my community and trying to make an impact and understanding that everybody can make that impact and having that mentality. I think it was something that really changed my worldview, and it really impacted the way that I had about my life today. And just describing a little bit about my own project right now is kind of based in that same realm. It's the intersection of really letting students take hold of like projects and develop and change the world. And as we know, AI is something that's definitely unavoidable now today. It's everywhere. People are talking about it all the time, especially at MIT. There's a lot of AI research that's being done here. But I think there's also a very large discussion in terms of higher ed expectations. MIT has a very unique approach to how we handle AI, and the fact that even from the beginning, when ChatGPT was first released around 2022, professors really encouraged the use of AI with, albeit, transparency. So it was easily incorporated into our learning curriculum, where students were given like the goal of trying to create an AI output, or they would give a specific input to the AI, and they would recognize when it would help efficiency, where it could help, learn and be a tutor, but also where the areas where AI could falter, where there's still need for a human in the loop and kind of learn like the weaknesses of AI and how to better utilize AI. And I think this has been a very unique approach, and it's something that's really encouraged a lot of that same builder project-based mentality at MIT, where people are using AI tools now as almost an accelerator to kind of launch off their projects and really make a real world impact at a really rapid, fast pace. And I think that's kind of a very interesting subset. And thinking about that kind of project-based impact learning reminded me back of OASD and where I first learned about it and developed those skills. But there's obviously the question right now that's pretty hot about how we address AI in the classroom. And there's a lot of different caveats that come with this, and there's a lot of different hesitancies when I've discussed with like different schools or teachers, professors about introducing AI into the classroom. And I think a lot of these concerns are very valid in the fact of like unmonitored AI usage. So we can try to restrict AI, and I think it's important to do so in order to, have students' minds develop and start developing problem-solving skills on their own. But I still think it's very important that AI has become a very indisputable part of the future. And as my peers at MIT and I move forward towards the workforce, we're doing interviews. Almost every single job out there is asking about how well we know AI, how well we can work with AI, and kind of introduce our older workforce members as well into AI, bring in these new practices. And it's something that's become a real industry standard we have. So I think it is very important, and it would be a head step to teach students about AI, but it is true that it has to be monitored very well and regulated. And there's an emerging like AI literacy gap that we've seen as well from even peer institutions like Harvard, where they do have more of a restricting kind of policy behind AI. Definitely MIT students are much more flexible and understanding and more comfortable using AI in efficient ways. And I think that's kind of shown in the projects that MIT students have created, the companies they've created as well. So I think my goal around this kind of problem, I thought about this problem space, and I really want to help encourage like ethical and safe usage of AI into the classroom. And so I have a bit of a project proposal about adding responsible AI infrastructure for OASD classrooms. I think that this is something that's super important to me, as I mentioned before, how I even thought of this process in the first place, how I even got to MIT and had access to all of these wonderful opportunities really stemmed from my education, K through 12 education in OASD. And a large part of that was the project-based learning. So we do have things like Global Academy at Oshkosh West, communities at North, but even in the way that we support student newspapers or we support robotics groups, I think there is a strong culture of letting students take the lead and actually make an impact in the community. And I think the community is also so welcoming to making changes that like students have implemented as well. So I think this is like a really great space here. And I obviously have a very deep understanding of the OASD culture, being there for 12 years previously. And I think that this would be a great space. I think I've seen a lot with what AI can do for students. And I think that's something that would really mesh well with the specific OASD infrastructure and also like the project-based learning that's really being promoted here. And I obviously have a very strong personal investment and attachment to the OASD community. Yeah, so this is a little bit about the solution that I've helped co-create, which is called Trust AI. And essentially what this is creating out a basic K through 12 AI infrastructure. So it's working with the students and the teacher in kind of a safe way to create a way and a space where students can not only learn about AI, how it works, they can learn how to use it, and they can also learn how to be more efficient with it and also benefit off of extra learning from maybe having an AI tutor. And in terms of the teacher and the administration side, that's things like helping teachers use AI to organize grading feedback, helping them monitor and keep track of what's going on in their classroom. And then from the admin side as well, it's tracking things more like AI literacy, getting all the analytics behind it, knowing how people are using AI. Right now, I'm sure there's some sort of bit of restriction with AI, how teachers do that individually, but it's still hard to monitor it with students like going back home and just using ChatGPT and putting it on there. So instead of doing that approach, it's more welcoming AI, allowing students to use the AI, but in a way that is monitored and it is controlled by the teachers. So how we do this right now is essentially we have a website and it acts as like there's many different components that you can see on this little dashboard that we have here. But just an intro, like we have a little bit of just an AI education section. And this is things like block coding, which is kind of similar to Scratch if you're familiar with it, an hour of code, except our output kind of shows exactly how the block code logic translates to actual code, which is being used and very standard today. And kind of also with AI, it's not just teaching students like what ChatGPT is, it's breaking down how LLMs, large language models work, how the logic behind it works, the math behind it works in a very simple and kind of playful way that's interactive. And it's also teaching concepts like Git, which is important for coding later on, and also workflows as well. And this is something that's applicable. It's just the general AI education. It can be for students, teachers, admin, really open to anybody. But this is just kind of the behind logic behind how AI works. I think there's definitely a lot of resources out there, but it can get kind of messed up in like the clutter. So we kind of extrapolated like the most simplest form of what you need to know and trying to do that in a very interactive and fun way. And then beyond that, something that I've really focused on as well is creating AI projects. So these are just some examples I can show you of some ways that we've used AI to kind of make interactive things that can be added onto the lesson plan. So for example, this is something that a student of mine have made, but it can be like a teacher making this as well, or a student to help understand or help improve their peers' learning. But this is a really great way to kind of visualize how like the food chain works. And instead of just having like a whiteboard lesson plan, this is a really nice way for students to not only learn like code and AI, but it's also something that's integrating directly into like common curriculums like science. I think that one important thing when mentioning AI as well is talking about how AI is not only bucketed to computer science like courses and high school courses. It's really being able to be integrated anywhere into any of the common curriculum. And I think that's something that is really forward looking and moving forward in the future. And another aspect of our platform is this curriculum aligned monitored AI. Essentially what this means is that students are given access to an AI helper in the form of a chatbot, but we have an extra layer of like regulation on top of this model. What that basically means is that it's a layer of protection that prevents the students from just asking for an essay to be generated. The essay will not be generated. There's a stop before then. It'll just help recommendations. It won't give the answers to the students. And each of these models can be trained or configured in a way. We have a general model as well, but it can be trained only off of materials that the teacher would upload. And this could be something that the teacher consciously chooses to upload. And when the AI is responding to the student's questions, it only pulls from the specific base. And this can be really helpful if it's available, after hours, after school. Maybe the student wants a little extra help and guidance, but obviously school is not running. So they can ask their little bot that has been trained off of the inputs that the teacher has given them. And then this output is also able to be monitored by the teacher. So every single log that the students have with this AI bot, the teacher can individually see on their side of the platform. And there's also flags and things like that if anything comes up that's a little bit concerning for the teachers to review as well. And another major output of forward learning is the formative assessment of AI and how well students are using AI. So that's another input that we have kind of started to build out, and that's analyzing the students' logs themselves. So how well are they asking like this AI to help them out? Like how specific are they being? And I think this is a very important skill. It's often referred to as prompt engineering, but teaching this at a very, very young age is very future forward looking. In the workforce, even in college and leading institutions like MIT, this is a very critical skill to have. We have such great resources utilizing AI, and it's something that can really help make super efficient products, but it's very difficult if you don't have the initial knowledge of how to best prompt it. AI can do so many things, but it can only do it if you ask it to. So this is really developing that skill by giving feedback to the student and also letting the teacher know how well is the student using this AI. Is it just asking it for answers, which the bot was trained and will not give the answers, but is it asking inquisitive questions? And how are we connecting this back to the original learning process that we have and how the student is following through with the curriculum-based learning as well?
So Hannah, one of the things we probably can't go through everything tonight, but I just wanted to point out one of the things that we'll be connecting you with is our technology department, and the integration of potentially some of these opportunities with students, whether it's a pilot at the end of this year or staying connected. So I just want to thank you for your presentation. I think this is one. It's great to see you again. That you're doing well. I think when we had talked last time, you'd also mentioned graduation is coming up in May, right?
Yeah, so I'm on track to graduate early. Yes.
Awesome. So, and a double major, is that right for you?
Yes.
Okay. In what? Can you describe what that is?
CS, Econ, and then also business analytics.
All right. Excellent. Well, congratulations. That's a major feat in any institution, much less MIT. It's great to hear. Again, that's part of our mission, is to make sure that students are career, college, and community ready. You're a shining example of that, certainly, and look forward to what's to come, and it's certainly a bright future. So, with that, I just want to open it up to see if any board members have questions for Hannah or any comments.
Yeah. I've been particularly interested in AI and how it's going to affect K-12 for a long time. Do you think that this type of model that you're showing us, or some form of it, is likely going to be how AI is going to interact with K-12 education moving forward? Because I think some districts are going to move forward faster on this and create new create how learning is, or change how learning is done. That's my
Yeah, I think definitely. I think this is the future of learning. I think AI has opened up this wonderful, amazing chest of tools for us to use. And it's kind of impossible to avoid that now. And we can really get a deep and personalized insight for every single student with AI, something that was really difficult to do or constrained by how much time educators had, how much time parents had. And I think AI is a really powerful tool that can bridge that gap. And it's kind of a two-weighted street with that. So it's how AI can help the student and help the teacher understand the student, but it's also how can the student understand AI and use it in the future and really be adept at using this tool, which will be critical later on.
Well, thank you. And I just sitting here feeling like we're fortunate enough for you to give us a little glimpse into what the future will look like. Because I think it's hard for people to even imagine what the AI educational future looks like. And I feel like I finally got it from you. And I'm real appreciative of that. So thank you so much. And so proud of you. I mean, it's awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really honored to be back here. And definitely, like, Oshkosh is my home, it's my roots. And it's really such an honor to be back and also help, try to give back to my original community as well.
That's wonderful.
I'm really impressed by how you've analyzed your K-12 education in our district and applied AI to that, and will help us move forward as we navigate these unknown waters for many of us. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciated what you did at West High when you were head of the green group over there. That was very impressive, and just wish you all the best, and I'm just thrilled that you're going to be working with us on this project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it'll be very exciting. And I think, Oshkosh has all this great infrastructure, and it's actually like the perfect framework for really excelling through AI as well.
That's great. Well, thank you, Hannah. To say we're impressed is an absolute understatement. We wish you all the best luck as you go through your last few months at MIT, and we can't wait to see what the future holds for you and the partnership we can build with you in Oshkosh.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
Hannah.
a good
Take care.
night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, that was amazing. Wow.
Good luck calling that.
Okay, superintendent's report.
Well, I will do my best. Hannah stole my thunder, but we do have some great things that are still going on, from our 4Kers up through our seniors, throughout the system. So certainly want to be able to highlight the future Hannah Chungs of the world. So our early learning 4K families recently gathered for their annual family block party, an evening dedicated to purposeful play and relationship building. Our 4K learners practiced the 4 stages of block play, laying the foundation for future STEM, literacy, and social emotional skills. And to ensure the momentum continues, every family went home with a specialized toolkit to support STEM learning right in their own living rooms. So thank you for everyone who came out for that. 8th graders at Carl Traeger in South Park recently traded their typical lunch break for an inspiring lunch and learn career sessions. Students engaged with local experts from emergency medicine and MedFlight, as well as mental health, and explored to explore high demand fields. It's a powerful day of sparking curiosity and connection and big dreams to real world career opportunities right here in our own community. Our Oshkosh West Black Student Union recently hosted its 2nd annual Black History Gallery Walk, featuring a moving ceremony of student spoken word and community speeches. Following the program, guests explored student-curated exhibits highlighting pivotal Black figures who have shaped history and culture. This momentum continues this Friday, 2 days from now, on February 27th at Oshkosh North, as they host their Gallery of Heroes event. All are welcome to join us from 5 o'clock to 6:30 in the North Cafeteria. Menominee Elementary School recently celebrated its annual Read Your Heart Out event, a vibrant day where our Blue Jays embraced the culture through literacy, art, and music. Students engaged with community guest readers and participated in global drum circles and collaborative art. The celebration fostered deep school connections and even revealed a hidden talent, an impromptu performance by first grader Amir's doing his cafeteria DJ session. So emerging careers as we speak. So Amir did a great job. I want to say congratulations. Shout out to Mr. Ryan Lindley, who is our choir teacher at Perry Tippler Middle School in Elps, for being named the 2026 Wisconsin Choral Directors Association Outstanding Young Choral Director. The state-level honor recognizes Ryan as a master teacher who demonstrates exceptional musicianship and student rapport within the first decade of teaching. Additionally, his students describe him as a guiding and inspiring mentor who breathes life into the classroom while fostering a deep sense of belonging. We're proud to have such a dedicated educator as Ryan leading our students and representing our district on the state stage. So congratulations, Ryan. Well deserved. Last Friday, our high schools and community united for a powerful mental health awareness night during our varsity basketball doubleheader. Students and fans joined a whiteout to symbolize breaking the stigma, and 15 community agencies on site to provide families with mental health resources. This inspiring event demonstrated while our teams may compete on the court, our district stands as one when it comes to supporting the well-being of our students and community. Our schools recently took time to honor and dedicate the professionals who keep our students safe on the journey to and from school each day. Pictured on this screen is Julie, a beloved crossing guard at Carl Traeger Elementary, who represents the commitment shown by all of our crossing guards. We want to thank Julie and all the rest of our crossing guards we're incredibly grateful for the vital role that they play in our community and with our students. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. The halls of Reed Elementary were filled with appreciation as the student-led Kindness Club honored teachers. Students hand-delivered paper hearts filled with positive messages and decorated classroom doors with notes of gratitude for their teachers and staff. This student-driven initiative highlighted the deep bond between Reed's educators and learners, showcasing the school culture where students feel loved, supported, and seen. And finally, just again, out and about in the community, I got an opportunity to network both at the state level and national level over the last month, and just carrying a lot of that information forward into some of our reports tonight and the upcoming spring. So thank you for being welcoming out there, and looking forward to continuing our conversations. So that concludes the superintendent's good news report for tonight. Not as good as the alumni spotlight, but as good as I could do. So.
And I wanted to add one other thing onto that. At the Black History Month, Mr. Anthony Miller received an award from the students for his involvement to make students feel heard and his involvement in the community. So congratulations. It was a heartfelt award, and the students really enjoyed giving that to you. So thank you very much.
Well done.
Okay, and now we'll move on to District Administrator's supplemental reports. The first one is Dr. Coleman, verbal report from February 11th board listening session.
Good evening, members of the board. During the February 11th school board listening session, several themes from 4 community members emerged related to school safety practices, school resource officers, and follow-up transparency. One of the points of communication that was shared at that meeting pertained to use of K-9 search dogs in our schools. There were questions about what would initiate the use of police dogs and the accuracy of those police dogs. There were questions raised about whether the records are maintained regarding search outcomes. Additionally, there were community members who provided some questions and perspective about the national model for SROs in schools and the educational impact, and then questions about the ways we monitor and understand the impact of SROs within the schools. Additional questions were raised regarding SRO-related policies or school resource officer-related policies, our memoranda of understanding, court presence in our schools, and the MOU renewal process. Administration indicated that the intent is to update and not lapse the MOU as for the SROs, and then to create an MOU for what our agreement looks like with teen court held at our high schools. Additionally, an administrator reported out on our Speak Up, Speak Out app and indicated some data around the frequency of tips that we receive through the Speak Up, Speak Out app and what our review process and monitoring of that looks like. Additionally, a community member requested clear follow-up and visible action steps taken resulting from our listening sessions. So some next steps that we've identified is to review and clarify communication regarding the use of canine search dogs in our schools and then the data tracking for that, to provide information and an update to the board and to the community members who post questions pertaining to our school resource officer MOU and our MOU that we'll engage in with the Winnebago County Court to hold teen courts in our schools. To also consider reporting trends related to the Speak Up, Speak Out submission outcomes. Those would be trends that we would provide to the school board, and we would do that if it makes sense to do so at a frequency of at least once a year. And then also to improve transparency regarding how listening session feedback informs action at the administrative level or at the board level. Any questions about that?
And what's the timing for increasing the transparency or coming back to the board with answers after the listening session?
Well, now, I mean, one of the things that I've done is if there are specific action items or specific questions that we can answer from an administrative perspective, we engage with those community members directly. I think some of those other questions are posed to the board, and there's some collaboration that needs to happen between board members and administration for us to get those answers back. And I'll work with Dr. Davis so that we can get some insight on what that plan looks like. So Dr. Davis and I will connect on that tomorrow.
Okay. I could maybe add to, I was at the meeting as one of the, well, I was not one of the official board members there, but I think that the report out is, I think there's kind of some frustration, I think, on everyone's involvement of like not really necessarily knowing the point or of the listening sessions or how they can be impactful as a means of communication between the community and the board and administration. So I think there is a hope, and I'm not, and it might maybe should perhaps be led by the board to say like this is the what we are looking for out of these sessions, because I think a lot of people kind of feel almost it's kind of lost its way in some ways of, and I don't know that that's automatically a bad thing. It's just it has not necessarily been evaluated as for its efficacy or things throughout. You know, I think it was first we figured it out that we think the listening session started about, at least the policy was created about 9 years ago for them, and I don't think it's really been ever thoughtfully reviewed too much since.
Okay, great.
All right.
We look forward to hearing more. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next, Mrs. Cole, math achievement update with Dr. Brown and Dr. Coleman and Mrs. Kiffmeyer.
So as we prepare to answer questions and talk through this report, it is important that I frame what we're looking at. So the report that was made available in the school board packet is the iReady mid-year data for math, so we'll start with that. But it's important that I indicate that that mid-year data report in the publicly available document in the board packet, shows where students would be now compared to where they should be at the end of the school year. So I provide that caveat so that we are clear on what our discussion is as far as expectations for student growth and student achievement as measured by the iReady. So what we're looking at in that report is the benchmarks for where students would be at the end of the year and how far they are from that right now at mid-year. So I'll open with that caveat and then answer any questions that you might have about that report.
Well, I got questions. You're showing data, so I appreciate you're explaining what the public had available.
Mm-hmm.
I think then you did provide to the board an update, and I'm wondering if you could explain to us what that is again, because I look at I look at the tables that provide the performance relative to the national norm and the median percentile of typical growth. And all those numbers are exactly the same in both reports. But the only thing that seems to be changing is the axes, the y-axes, and so I'm trying to understand what is the distinction between those two?
The distinctions will be the benchmarks in there, and I don't know if you want to
Sure.
talk more about that, but.
Yeah, so what the median typical growth, goes, you see like 50% or that number 50 is the median, like the median typical growth at this time of the year. So the first graph you saw, right, in 1 year's time, we would like to see kids meet that 100% typical growth, meaning they've grown 1 year in 1 year's time. But that 100 is the end of the year benchmark. So halfway through the year, ideally, we'd be at that 50% mark where we've reached half of a year's growth in half of a year's time. So the second chart that the board was provided with after the public packet went out shows our students' performance with growth and performance in the quadrants compared to the benchmark for the middle of the year. So where we would expect students to be at the middle of the year is at or above that 50.
And if I remember, there was only one school that wasn't at the 50?
Correct.
And so if I'm understanding this correctly, we had been asking for information to be able to say, to basically make sure that we're keeping our foot on the gas throughout the rest of the year. That, yes, we are in these lower quadrants that right now, if we look at where the kids should be at the end of the year, and we are not at the end of the year, we are at low growth and some high performance and some low performance. But if we were continue to grow and do the success that we hopefully are starting to see here, that would be a more positive graph than we are currently looking at in the publicly accessible documents. Is that accurate?
That would be an accurate assessment, and it's important that I, if I can, just zero in on that concept of keeping our foot on the gas. So what we do know is the strategies, the resources, the efforts by students, by teachers, by our administrators, and our parents, that they are working. And what we want to make sure that we don't do is let up on that. Especially when we think about, if we go back to last year and we looked at the growth progression throughout the year, we see students make impressive growth during the first 3 quarters of the year, and then we start to see that typically stall out toward the end of the year. We want to make sure that that's not our experience this school year, and so we're using this estimation and these data as a way for us to avoid ending in the spaces where we have in previous years, where it appears that we're doing great mid-year and maybe a little bit into the third quarter of the year, and then we end the year falling short of what our goals were. So this gives us a pretty good picture of where we would be if we kept status quo. And what we are committed to doing is keeping our foot on the gas so that we meet our goals for performance and growth.
Go ahead, you want to go?
I read through the data, and I've went through data like this a number of times now, because I've been on the board for a little while. And we've had goals like this that, or goals that we've wanted to reach in the past that we haven't. And I think we all take ownership for that, right? Why are there some reasons, or what would your main reasons be for us to believe that that we're going to hit our desired goals this time? What are you seeing? You know what I mean? Because I think the community needs to buy in and we need to have that, and there's specific reasons why.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. So if you look at the data that you received, the update, you'll see that we are on track to meet our goals. And that's not different really from where we were last year. And then we saw that although by this point last year we were on track to meet our goals, we did not. So what I'm seeing different and what some of the promising examples are is who's looking at this data and who is it important to. So as we begin to facilitate implicating teaching and learning, where teaching and learning is happening, implicating those teams in the data so that we're not just having a board conversation about student achievement and goal setting, but this is happening right where the teaching and learning is happening. So students are setting goals, this is a different approach than what we've typically taken. So across the system, students, teachers, our instructional support staff, they are all involved in the goal setting and strategy for what performance improvement should look like. We've also integrated in the norm of our instruction preparation opportunities for students to reach those goals. So we aren't assuming that just because you set a goal that it'll be reached. We also are identifying what are the specific actions that need to be taken for you to reach those goals, not just on the iReady, but also on the forward. So when students know what their stretch growth goals are, and they know what actions they are supposed to take to reach those goals, and teachers have those same goals for the number of students who are going to reach their stretch growth, and they know the actions that are necessary for the students to reach those goals. That changes the conversation. So we aren't just here at the board level having that conversation, but it's happening across our system, right where the teaching and learning is happening. So that will be what's different this year compared to previous years. It would also be an approach that is not only new to our system, but it's going to come with, I'll describe it as some growing pains, because it's also a shift in philosophy with how we use data and how we understand what standards students are going to be assessed on, and we focus on those with deliberate strategy as a part of the instruction. So if I, as the teacher, know exactly what my students are going to be assessed on the forward exam, for example, students aren't waiting until they take the forward test to see those types of questions. They're integrated in the instruction, and then students' ongoing experiences right now, and will be up until the point where they take those assessments this spring. So those are some different strategies, and certainly there are different opinions about, philosophically, is that how we want to use test data and use these data to set our goals. But because these are key performance indicators that the board has identified, we're prioritizing preparing for those forward tests in different ways and using these data to set goals and establish strategies, again, right where the teaching and learning is happening.
I mean,
Just more
Yeah.
there.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dr. Coleman mentioned the goal setting. It was strategic and intentional this year that all middle school students had goal sheets starting at the beginning of the year to look at last year where they ended with iReady and talk about like how to get to that next piece, and also be super intentional with our kids who are 2-3 grade levels behind or more, that you may not see that this year, but by reaching your stretch growth, by going past what you need to do continually in a couple of years, you will be at grade level. So sometimes our kids feel like it's a lost cause, like all they see is red, right? So we want to be intentional about having our conferences with our students and goal setting and talk about like what pushes you point-wise to the next grade level. It's only maybe 6 points sometimes that gets you to the next spot. That's doable for you. What do we need to do? How are we going to engage in that conversation? So they did that at the beginning of the year. They now looked at it at mid-year from what they did from beginning of the year to mid-year and set those goals now for the end of the year. And that was very intentional and very different than anything we've done before at the middle school level.
And I will say that we have really promising data to support how important that is for, like she said, the kids that are always seeing red. So our district median progress toward typical growth is 56%.
Yeah.
For students who are 3 or more grade levels behind, it was 73%.
I read that.
For students who are 2 grade levels behind, it was 63%. So their progress toward that typical growth is higher than like the whole, students as a total. And so that's some really promising data out there for us to say that the kids that need to grow the most in order to achieve proficiency are growing more.
Faster rate.
So at a
Yeah.
faster rate.
I kind of would like to talk about that a bit more because, I mean, I think the kids have known for a long time that they're failing and being failed. And even the way that we're talking about it now, I feel a little bit, I'm very concerned actually that a lot of this feels like it's on the kids. I get that you're saying it's not, but it is. And what are we doing to change the teaching practices? Because I'm excited that we're getting those kids that are 2 and 3 years behind to reach those stretch goals, but they need to have mass, and those kids can't reach those stretch goals by themselves. And a 1.5 year growth in 1 year is not good enough for those kids because they're more than 3 years behind. What are we going to do to change the teaching practices and to hold? I'm very worried about the educator effectiveness and kind of switching the balance here. Because again, the kids know, they know when they can't read, and they know when they're not doing effective math, they're seeing their test scores, and they can't do anything about it unless somebody is effectively teaching them. So, and how stretch, like, I get that we need to be excited about people making faster growth, but I'm so leery of that because it's not enough. And so what's the switch that's going to be made to actually get us there?
Yeah, I'll address the first part starting, and that is while we certainly have expectations that students are involved in their learning, giving input around what they need from their teachers, what they need from the learning community and the conditions that are in their school for them to meet their goals. We are also certainly having those same conversations with teachers. And so there's a teaching and learning focus on this instead of having these conversations just at the administrator level. Where is the teaching and learning happening? And so I would say just in the same way that students are implicating themselves and their growth goals and their growth data, teachers are also implicated in the data that they are producing. And so I would say some of the examples we gave talk about how we are getting students excited and getting students involved in their own journey. We are certainly having those same conversations with teachers so that there's ownership of the results that we are producing. And certainly there are conversations that we need to have about how we leverage our educator effectiveness feedback system to include teaching and learning, because our true measure of our educator effectiveness is student performance and student growth. And that's also a shift to the earlier question around what's different or what steps are we taking to get different results. It's bringing that educator effectiveness conversation to a space that specifically focuses on math and reading achievement and not simply focusing on personal growth goals that educator or that principal might have. So that is a different shift. Dr. Davis, I don't know if you wanted to share any more about that, but.
No, I think you hit it. There needs to be a balance in the classroom, certainly, and we have to make progress. And I think as I was around the district today, just talking with talking with different principals about that, what becomes evident as we start to really be more data-driven and looking at these assessments is where it's happening and where it's not. And a lot of that is, from a classroom standpoint and a leadership standpoint from the teaching perspective. And so those are conversations that we're, again, taking head on. And when it's not happening, to be able to provide appropriate supports, or from an evaluation standpoint, maybe it's not a good fit because we're in a different time. We have urgency to be able to move things forward. We can't do it like we had before. Majority of people step up to that and will support that, and some people won't. So I think we have to also just realize that that's going to have to be part of our processes as we're moving forward. But otherwise, I would just concur with what Sam had mentioned.
I think the other thing that I would say is like direct specific feedback on the implementation of the curriculum has been very focused this year, like targeted feedback on what we're seeing and what we're not seeing, and then following up with principals. So like I'm giving feedback, and if the principal's not with me at that time, I'm copying the principal on and following up, and then they're the ones that are doing those like daily checks or weekly checks on that because I can't be in every classroom, right? So just being really direct and specific with that feedback, that it's not about like defending where you're at and what that looks like. It's like, this is what we need for our kids to move forward. This is the expectation. And the huge theme that we've seen at the middle school and probably the elementary school too is the fact the cognitive load has to shift from our teachers and put back onto our students so they can apply it when those state tests come up and those things come up that they need to apply it to.
How or are, I mean, do we bring parents and kids support systems into the process? Because I feel like when we're, and I mean, in a support system can be a lot of different things, but I feel like parents and support systems of these kids are vital towards making any of this happen. Do we?
That's a really important leg. So I would say that would be an important part when I think about like what we're going to talk about from a district-wide framework. When we're zooming in, the reality is the work in the classroom, actions in the classroom are what matters. The parent and support systems are really important in that process, mostly to understand what our goals are, right? To understand what the student goals are, to understand what the supports are. Not dependent to like, we can't do it here, so go teach, but like, what are some supports that might be able to help, resources, and just an awareness. So when you come to, I mean, the most practical example, again, as I was talking to principals today, was parent-teacher conferences, right, or opportunities like that. Like, we should be talking about goals. Students should be reporting out their goals to their parents or their support systems on what their achievement is, how they've done. Like, that should be something that should be just baked into like what that experience is in real ways. Like, that's the culture we want to be able to help cultivate. And again, it's not all about the test scores, but we have to have some urgency because we're talking about some serious gaps that we have, and we have to have kids that are better prepared to be able to move, beyond OASD. And that requires a broader approach, again, as a partner. But I think being able to prioritize the conversation, the data conversations, again, and expect that is something, one of the moves that we can make. So, Sam, we had talked about that a little bit earlier. I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah,
anything
the
more on that.
only thing I would add to that is improving and developing more effective ways to have that ongoing communication or regular cadence for communication between the classroom and home. And so while certainly we have, and I'm just thinking, for example, at elementary levels, while certainly we have an opportunity to empower students to have those conversations with their parents, it's also on us as adults to have effective ways to communicate with parents about student achievement, student progress, or concerns about barriers that might exist to those, to that progress. And so one of the things that we are approaching and reviewing right now is what are more effective ways beyond Infinite Campus progress reports and so forth to communicate with parents and families how their children are doing and what we can do to partner to increase student achievement.
Just a couple things to add to your point, Chris, regarding parents. One of the benefits of the Bridges 3rd edition is at the end of every unit, parents get an assessment report that shows the standards that were assessed for that unit and the proficiency level of their students. And then along with it, it actually personalizes the report for each student and provides suggestions to families on things that they can do to help support their students in the areas that maybe they aren't proficient with. So that is one way that parents get that information and have some suggestions and things. And then Molly, to your point, as far as in addition to Jackie's comment about that really explicit feedback to teachers, we also are using that student data to identify where our student-centered coaching happens. So it's student-centered coaching, so our math coaches are going in to work with teachers whose students aren't showing that high growth or high performance. And so we're really using that data to help us determine where that coaching happens in order to grow kids' skills and grow teachers.
Dr. Ford.
Yeah, most of my questions have been answered, so I'll just say that I think this has been a very encouraging conversation. I mean, what I'm hearing here is you all using a data-driven strategy to make sure that we have consistent high expectations that start with the board, go all the way down to the students. Some of that consistency and alignment we haven't had, with the ultimate goal of closing our achievement gaps and raising overall student achievement. And that's very clearly aligned with what we've been asking for as a board, giving you direction, Dr. Davis, at least in my year here. So obviously the proof's going to be in the pudding, but I think this is really relevant to our next conversation during the workshop tonight, but certainly reflects the direction this board has given you, Brian. So thank you.
Dr. Hess?
I think in the education committee, we didn't take this up. We took up the achievement gap reduction. But one thing that we talked about is having a future conversation about the timing of when the data is released, having an opportunity to have conversations about it before we get to this point, so that to some extent we can be on the same page. Because I am very much so struggling with this. And I think I go back to what I have continued to hear, that our responsibility, our two primary responsibilities are accountability and fiduciary responsibility. And the education is the primary thing that we have. So this is what we have to look at. And I want to be able to look at this and say, are we making progress? And we didn't see this last year, mid-year results. This is the first time that we're seeing it presented this way. I think we saw the data presented this way last June at the end of the year results. And that's where I struggled, because we're dealing with an assessment that is on a nationally normed scale, and I just don't know how that references to, say, the forward exam, where we know the forward exam is aligned to, say, state standards. This has a lot of the same things, and we know that, and I think you guys have talked about that a number of times. But what ends up happening is something on this scale may look really good, but then it gets to the forward exams and all of a sudden we're disappointed. And I would argue, I went back and looked while you guys were talking at the results that were presented at the June meeting of last year. And for math, it looked like the typical growth was at 100%. And for reading, the typical growth was at 140%. And then we saw the forward exams and everything went down. And so my fear is that's the thing that I'm most interested in, is something that is aligned to the state standards. And I think what scares me is, Dr. Coleman, you talked about your impression of last year was the first 3 quarters, there was a lot of growth, and then the last quarter, we struggled. And if that happens, if I look at this, it looks like math is at roughly 50% so far this year, and reading is at roughly 70% this year. If we were saying that's halfway there, well, mathematically it is, but if we don't see growth in the last quarter, this is actually a result that kind of scares me if what you were saying is true. And so that's my struggle, is I want to know that we are making progress, but this data aligned with your sentiment of what you think happened last year, we got to make sure that doesn't happen, because otherwise it's going to be a really bad end of the year result. But in part, I'm pushing for let's have some of these conversations ahead of time so that we can make sure we're seeing and discussing the right things, that the community sees it, so that we can say that we are accurately holding us all accountable to what's going to happen. But that's my struggle with all of this, is it's not clear to me that this is great success.
Yeah, and you are right. I did erroneously communicate in my update to the board that we discussed this at Education Committee. So I apologize for that. We did not. We discussed the Achievement Gap AGR grant. you also are correct that what we saw last year was promising growth the first 3 quarters. I didn't say we struggled the last quarter. I think we plateaued. Our growth did not continue at the end. And I agree with your assessment that this may not be the data that the board looks at mid-year to make any determination or assessment about student performance. I don't believe that the iReady report, and we'll talk about that, or Dr. Davis will have that in the workshop next. So this may not be what the board needs to have insight on student performance by the end of the year. This is for teachers, and this is for the instruction that happens at the teaching and learning level in the classrooms. And so if the use of these data don't give the board what it needs to have insights on how students are performing, I'd be curious to hear what you would like to see if this isn't it. The purpose of this report is, in today's presentation, is to talk specifically about iReady, but I'm happy to talk about the forward, if you'd like, and what we're doing to increase the likelihood that student performance on the forward looks better this year compared to last year, because there are many things that teachers are doing every single day. And as Jackie and Aaron mentioned, all of us, including me, we are in classrooms checking to make sure that those strategies are happening to give students access to the skills and strategies that they need to practice so that they can get better performance results on the forward.
And I think that's a really important, and again, we'll have further conversations about that in the next couple months, but it is critically important from a cultural standpoint that we get some consensus from the board about what metrics that we're using, because we are literally using whatever those metrics will be, we are literally using those metrics to do teacher evaluations. As a portion of teacher evaluations, that's where we're headed. We have to be headed in that regard. So it's important that whatever we settle on, we're going there. Because if we're wavering, we're like, well, that assessment, because I've seen this in other districts, well, that assessment is okay, but it's not great. And so if we're pushing at a classroom level that you have to perform, if you're going to stay in OISD, you have to perform on this measure, and I'm not performing, and I pick up the phone and I call somebody and say, hey, that measure kind of stinks, and somebody in leadership says, well, you're right, yeah, don't worry about it. That destroys every hour of work that we're doing to try to move students forward in the system. So it's really important that, and there's not going to be a perfect measurement, but it's really important that we get clear direction, and that's part of what the framework is. Will be, as we look at prioritizing in June, that we get settled on something, and that we have to commit to whatever that is. Because if we're wavering, that is exactly how mediocrity is going to survive the next 3 to 5 years, by not being clear, by not following through, and it's going to be status quo as we're moving forward. Our kids we cannot have that happen here. We have way too much on the line. We have kids that are coming out of the system that are not prepared. We heard a great example tonight about some of the great stuff that we're doing, but we have way too many kids that are leaving the system that are not prepared. We can't afford to do it, and it starts at this table. It has to start with all 8 of us, right, getting consensus around what our framework is and what our measures are, and then I'm sending that down the system, all the way down the system, right? And so when we're walking into classrooms, I want to see iReady scores. I want to talk to kids about what their goals are, or whatever measure we're using. That's the level of conciseness that we need as we're moving forward to put true accountability in the system and clarity. It has to be all the way through. So we won't decide that tonight because we're going to look at the framework. But as next meeting, for the next 3 meetings, as we start talking about key performance indicators and what measures we're using, I just encourage board members to really think about the gravity of what that conversation is going to be, because we have to be able to put that forward, and we have to land that by ideally June, because we're starting to put plans together with our leadership teams over the summer, and they will be focused on whatever those marks are, whatever those measures are, That's what we're going to use for focus. And that's the way that it has to be. That'll be more transparent than we've have been in the last 5 years. I'll talk about that in a little bit with our framework, but we have to take the measurements have to be taken seriously, and we have to be able to get consensus at the table. That'll be very important.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate. I think this is still appropriate to this particular report, and iReady is for both math and reading. But maybe it's more in the strategic plan portion. I think part of the reason that we look at iReady so much is because there's a couple that I am aware of as a parent and as a board member and as a person who hears from admin about why it is valuable, is that iReady does do a really good job of talking about benchmarks and gives us specific data on things that are grade level. And I mean, when I see any report that actually talks about phonemic awareness, I'm like, oh, this is actually something useful that wasn't present in my kids' first 10 years of education in this district. So there's definitely a lot of value in it. And I love that it disaggregates and it focuses the assessment on a particular child. I think where we are going to start to come into some difficulties is if we get another year like we got last year, and which you all are very aware of, that like, hey, it's shown, iReady is telling us that we are on good track, and this is across the state and across the nation. Traditionally, iReady scores do reflect your state standardized assessment scores. That did not happen for our district last year, and iReady said, that's really surprising to us. I think the more that we can find out from iReady, if we are going to be in another situation like that again, that's how we know we have the integrity of a good system, is if they can explain to us why we are the anomaly. And so I think I'm not going to be the person who would ever advocate for moving away from iReady, for a very terrific tool for a lot of reasons. If it's not a KPI, that's one thing. But we need to know, by looking at the data, when it's not going to be, like, we need to be able to understand our data if it's going to, because that's what I'm hearing is you are all very nervous and very aware that, yes, we are on what appears to be a good trajectory for 50% of the school year, and what happens the next half, and how does this reflect on our forward test exams. And I don't know if we can ask iReady to help us analyze this, to figure this out, but, I mean, they seem like they're good at analyzing data, so.
Dr. Herzog? Thank you. I have several things I've been wondering about. I've often said that you can never have enough good communication, good chocolate, and good professional development. So my wondering, not necessarily in that order. My wondering is, how do we evaluate the effectiveness of the professional learning? And that's kind of hitchhiking on what Mrs. Smeltlik said about, is this really a student issue, or is this an adult issue? Is this a teaching issue? So are we providing appropriate and effective professional development to the teachers to deliver the curriculum? And how do we know that? How do we evaluate that?
So part of our, thank you for that question, Dr. Herzog. I think, and I'll add something to that. Certainly, professional development is an important input that we can control to improve capacity. I also think feedback and coaching, which is also professional development, but that looks, I'm not talking about our monthly PD days, but what does embedded professional development consist of, and how are we leveraging that to improve our outcomes? And so what our focus this summer will be, as we build out and refine our professional development calendar, is having those metrics and receiving feedback so that we can determine how effective that PD is. But more important than a professional development day where students aren't there is the coaching and the feedback and the observations in real time where the teaching and learning is happening. And so a shift that we've taken this year is providing more intensive feedback and coaching. And I will say, there are some growing pains with that, because we've received feedback from educators who are, so we need to do a better job at communicating when we provide this feedback. Is it evaluative? Is it non-evaluative? Do you need to defend it? Or how do you reflect with this? But one of the things that we've been serious and deliberate about this year, which is different from last year, is that real-time, in the moment, coaching and feedback right where the teaching and learning is happening. And so I mentioned that to say, as a board, and certainly I've received feedback already that is appreciated by some and maybe not appreciated by some. But that's part of what we have to do to make sure that teaching and learning meets our expectations. So again, as I mentioned, I provide feedback, and it might feel intimidating for the assistant superintendent of instruction to come into a classroom and watch what's happening, participate in what's happening, and then send feedback, and as Jackie mentioned, and then copy the principal on it as well. But that's what we have to do at this point to make sure that we are clear about what's expected, and that we are providing celebrations for what we're seeing as if it meets those expectations, or we're making those recommendations if we need to see improvement. So certainly part of our work this summer is to have a better way of evaluating the effectiveness of our professional development. But we also have to evaluate the effectiveness of our coaching, of our feedback, and of the conferring that occurs as it pertains to our educator effectiveness feedback model. So that's what our work is right now. And as Dr. Davis shared, this is work that we are urgent about and we're serious about. And it feels different. And maybe you've heard about it from some folks already. And if not, you will, because it's certainly a buzz that I've been getting some questions about. But this shift is necessary. And we have to do it. And teachers deserve feedback. Principals deserve feedback. Our instructional support teachers deserve feedback. And so we deserve feedback. And so we are shifting our culture so that we have a culture of feedback and a culture of coaching that allows us to be serious about our district's core value of responsive improvement.
Can I add?
Thank you.
We do have some metrics that help us to know if that feedback, evaluation, professional development is working. The rubrics that we use when we are observing in classrooms are aligned to our professional development, the things that we're focusing on with the engagement strategies. So they are aligned, so we are able to as we're observing classrooms and collectively looking at that data, to determine, like, are we seeing it in practice or are we not? In addition, with our student-centered coaching cycles, those cycles there's always a content-specific goal for students, and those students are assessed as far as where they're at with that learning goal at the start of the student-centered coaching cycle, and then they're assessed again at the end, and our coaches have forms that they're filling out where they're entering that data, and so it's really showing the impact on our students of what that coaching cycle has done, and the student growth that we've seen in that. So we do actually have a lot of data from our student-centered coaching cycles as well.
Thank you. And then in the staff report under communication, item F, the action steps that are in place. One of those is consistent use of high-quality instructional materials, which makes sense to me, probably to everyone in the room. I think it was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, we adopted a 7th grade math book, or math curriculum, math instructional item, textbook, because we were told that the current, or then current textbook was not in alignment with the expectations. What are the instructional materials that we're using in grades 6, 7, and 8?
For math?
For math.
I am 360 is what we're using.
Illustrative math.
Okay. So we did not adopt connected math?
No.
Okay. All right.
We found there was a lot of holes in our connections between what we were using before, which is why we made the switch, and also why we saw some specific data points on the forward that our kids were repeatedly not successful at, because we weren't aligned to that piece with the curriculum we had.
Which again comes back to a comment Mrs. Milt made earlier, and that is, if we're not teaching the students what they need to know, that's a problem, and that's not the students' problem, that's on us.
100%.
Okay, and then finally, how do we help students who do not appear to be making growth? You stated earlier we set stretch goals with students who are behind. We make them aware of those goals. I'm wondering about interventions that we implement. I recently had an opportunity to meet with a handful of teachers, primarily at the elementary level. There is a sense of urgency to move students along to the point of people crying, which is not a good thing. So And in my volunteer work in at least 3 of our elementary schools has demonstrated to me something that I knew empirically, but maybe didn't really have hard data on that. Now I do, with students who, not all students progress at the same rate. And Jamie Vollmer, in one of his books, talks about blueberries and how if you're in manufacturing, you can control the product coming in. We can't control the product. And they're very different. And so I'm concerned about the frustration level of teachers who have this sense that some students who need more time to master something aren't having that because they're moving on, they have to move on to the next lesson. So I'm really wondering about the interventions that are being used. And I've raised this question before. I'm wondering why we don't do more with summer school, not as the only way for students to have extra time to learn, but as part of the overall strategy for students to improve in a somewhat different, well, in a different atmosphere than they would experience during the regular school year. So mainly what I'm interested in is how do we help the students who do not appear to be making growth, and what interventions are we using, and what are we doing in summer school to help enhance those efforts?
At the middle school level, we have math skills and lit skills where kids get the extra layer of support.
Okay.
In transparency, 48-minute class periods are really difficult to do universal instruction and small group instruction. So that is an area of concern that we're continuing to evaluate. And one of the reasons like larger blocks of time would be helpful in the middle school level to be able to do some of those and some of the pieces that we need. Because if you look at the time of math and literacy at the elementary level and compare that to 48 minutes at the middle school and high school level, that's a dramatic difference to do that small group instruction. So that is an area of concern and an area we're still investigating on. But we do have layered supports for lit skills and math skills within that. It does come sometimes at a price because then some of their options for electives look different because we have to layer that support for them in addition to the classroom support.
Could I make a comment on that, though, too? Again, this is a lot about professional practices. Am I correct that the nationwide goal is 80% of your students should thrive in universal instruction? We should have less than 20% of our kids. So that need the interventions, that are taking more time. And I get that, yes, kids grow at a different way. But if we don't believe in our kids, and if we don't believe in each of them as individuals that they can get there, they're never going to get there. And I think the adults sometimes need to get out of our own feelings and actually focus on the fact that if we have ways that actually engage the students in the classroom, they will thrive in that classroom. It doesn't matter if they're newer arrivals to our district or to our country, or they speak 5 different languages, or the color of their skin. They can and will thrive if they have proper instruction.
I totally agree.
I don't know if I could make a comment or maybe before.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just have one thing. I like this discussion. I don't think that this is where this discussion is going to be a couple years from now. I think we're looking at this from the wrong angle. I think the whole K-12 institution is somewhat. That presentation we just saw from our West student, she is developing that right now. And those models will be bought up by K-12 school districts. So, and they're going to be able to analyze, those bots will be able to analyze our teaching methods. They'll be able to take data from district to district, and they'll be able to tell us what targets we should be able to hit. And they'll be able to tell us that bot was able to, or will be able to interact and tell you what the best interventions are, right? So I think that's the future. What we're going to do is what I don't want us to do is the last 4 or 5 years, we've sat up here and we've picked a number just because we thought it was a good number of what we should be achieving without weighing in all the external factors, like where kids are coming in at. like what is measured at good growth, right? Like, I think districts are going to figure out ways to embrace what we saw and do their evaluation methods and use that extra data and analysis to push their districts forward. So my comment is I want us to avoid using some of our own methodology when we're going to have such greater insights and data from AI. But that's my thought. Like, I don't want us to miss the boat.
Dr. Hess?
I want to clear up some things because I felt like Dr. Coleman and Dr. Davis, the way that you guys were talking, seemed as if that maybe there was a suggestion that we're looking at the wrong thing. And I am not saying that at all. iReady, there's a statement in here that definitive correlation cannot be made with the iReady with the Ford exam, and I would say, no, that's wrong. There is a very definitive correlation. We saw them, I think, last year we saw ranges at the different grade levels from like 86% to 93%, and that's a very strong correlation. The problem is between the two is just that the iReady has a lower benchmark as to where it says somebody's at grade level relative to the Forward exam. So, no, I absolutely think the iReady is a tool that we need to use because you guys are using it as more formative assessment to help the teachers guide what they are doing. That's exactly what we need to do. We could use the Forward exam as a formative assessment if we wanted to give that 3 times a year, but it's not a computerized adaptive test, so it wouldn't be fun. But an exam is not in and of itself summative or formative, it's how you use it. And we can use the iReady. The struggle is that the iReady threshold is much lower than the Forward exam. So when we're seeing 50% growth on the iReady, probably to see good results on the Forward, we need to see like 55% or something. We know that the benchmark is just lower there. So I'm not at all suggesting that it's the wrong analysis. I don't think we even need to go to iReady to explain why we're seeing the disparity. It's highly correlated. It's a tool that we can use. We've been using it. We're familiar with it. We should continue to use it.
And I think just getting some resolution to, different benchmarks, like that type of thing, as we get into our selection of KPIs and then our goal setting, I think will be important. So, yeah, I mean, good conversations. I think just digging into that over the next couple of months, I think will be really important. So, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next we have Dr. Brown with Reading Achievement Update.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, so you did have a chance to take a look at the written report, and I feel like a lot of conversations have already happened during the math achievement report. So I'd love to hear questions that you have specifically around literacy.
No.
We beat it to death already.
Yeah.
Probably the same.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, same.
Then I shall say thank you to Mrs. Cole, Mrs. Kiffmeyer, and Dr. Coleman.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. When I'm volunteering over at Bill Phillips in a literacy classroom, I've seen very strong evidence of teachers in 6th grade literacy using the results of iReady to inform instruction. They've gone over those results, it seems like, with a fine-tooth comb. They're aware of where every student is and how much growth they had achieved at the midpoint, namely semester. They identified areas where whole group instruction was needed with their respective 6th graders, as well as what specific skills and knowledge individual students were lacking. And I've seen them develop resources to address those. So I see that in action, and it certainly ties in with the major points related to using data to inform instruction. There's an excellent example of how that's working, at least in that 6th grade group at Bell Phillips.
Yeah, and they're strategically with the double block in 6th grade, being able to layer that support in you can spend your time in the universal and then be able to do a lot of that intervention work within that second block in small group instruction. And, some of the argument is, like you said, when you want to see 80% of your kids be at proficiency and our triangle is flipped sometimes, right, in some grades, some buildings, whatever that looks like, how do we build that universal instruction that was missed somewhere along the way so that we can build their skills through those gaps?
Another thing that's been evident in my volunteering over there is the collaboration among the teachers in that building. And I can only speak to 6th grade because that's the only grade level I've been volunteering in. But the collaboration that they do with all of the 6th grade literacy teachers, not only in that building, but in the other middle schools as well. So they're constantly getting feedback and getting ideas from their colleagues, which is how that collaboration time or professional development time, I think, should be used, at least part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Kiffmeyer, you mentioned something about lack of time as far as blocks of time, smaller blocks of time. In the past, I know I'm opening a can of worms, we have talked about potentially moving to block scheduling. Where are we with that?
Yeah, we've done some evaluations. So without getting too far into the weeds of this, the original purpose of block scheduling came from a task force to talk about identifying needs to support students and staff coming out of COVID. And then, some of the result of that was some money saving based on the block that we picked. And so now as we kind of reopened and we thought about the budget, is block beneficial budget-wise for us? So what we did is we, as an IST group, looked at some different models of block scheduling, because you have modified block, you have 4x4, you have the AB schedule. There's lots of different versions, and each one comes with a price tag for what that looks like, right? And so now it's thinking about what is our actual goal for why we would go to block? Is it, again, about the student time, the student experience, and does it have a positive impact on the budget, or is it more of a budget conversation? So we're taking the pros and cons of those models, and we did some evaluations of the IST group. Now we need to be looking at running those models for budget purposes of like the fiscal responsibility of that model.
Okay. That's all I kind of wanted to know, is that we still may be talking about it, because it would seem if you have a 43-minute block for reading or math, by the time you get settled down, you're down to a half hour, which doesn't seem to allow you to get into some major discussions. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kemmerer, student attendance quarterly report.
I am Director Kimmerer's stunt double tonight.
Excellent.
So not able to be
Striking
here.
result.
So you did receive the report as it pertains to attendance. Just the overall highlight is our current attendance rate is at 93%. This places us in the 4-star range according to our district's key performance indicator rating scale. And it is slightly below the state average, which is at 93.4%. I'm happy to either answer any questions that you might have or receive questions that you might have, and then get back to you with answers if I can't get those.
I just have one question. Mr. Kemmerer, last time he spoke about this, had some specific plans that he was putting into place to increase attendance. Do you know what the most successful plans have been?
Yes, so Director Kimmerer, along with our school social workers and community members, have convened in a group called Attendance Matters. And that Attendance Matters group, they've made some recommendations for ways that we can increase communication to families about the importance of regular attendance, also increasing communication with families to understand what barriers there might be to regular attendance. And so one of those effective strategies is through that increased communication, being able to identify where we see barriers, for example, on mornings where it might be raining, and students who walk to school may not come until it stops raining, or on days when it's too cold to walk to school, for example. So looking at ways we can help overcome those barriers, if those are reasons why we see students taking a day off here and a day off there, because it adds up. And so what we've noticed in our data is why we aren't as high as we could be is because of those taking a day off here, taking a day off there, and usually it's not due to illness. It's often due to barriers that we can help overcome. Another issue or another barrier to being as high as we could be is thinking about how we address student discipline. So when a student is suspended, certainly that affects our overall attendance rate. So looking at ways to prevent behaviors from becoming so big that they result in suspensions, or leveraging a recently adopted policy from the board to look at alternatives to suspension so that we can hold students accountable for conduct that fails to meet our expectations without denying that access to school education.
Thank you very much. One small anecdote related to that. Every day I work at the Hyde Center at Boys and Girls Club. I just want to put in another plug and how much I appreciate, and I hope we can expand the idea of the hub busing, where we have a bus stop that is in a somewhat centralized location that gets kids at least to a point where they can get there and then get to school from there. It also happens out by the Merrill track and field that I see whenever I come to our 7:30 meetings. But the kids are using that service, and I have to avoid hitting them every day in the crosswalk but they are running home from there, and that is a doable walk for them, whereas it would not necessarily be a doable walk all the way to their school. So the more that we can do that kind of thing is terrific.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Other reports, Education Committee.
The Education Committee met on Wednesday, February 4th. We talked about the AGR program. On February 11th, we got a great report from Dr. Brown, so we've heard all about it already. So that's it. That's what we did.
Excellent.
Next meeting will be March 4th at 7:30 a.m. Thank you.
Very much. Facilities and Finance.
Thank you. We had a very good conversation on Thursday. We were intending to meet on Thursday, February 20. This is wrong. We met on Monday, February 23rd, sorry. We were going to meet the previous Thursday, but we did not have a quorum, so we had to reschedule the meeting. The Recreation Department presented an update on seasonal pay requests, suggesting that seasonal employees stay within the same pay range as those in the city of Oshkosh seasonal employees, and that the OASD has been keeping up with the pay scale of the city seasonal workers, because it's important that we have those seasonal workers in place. So the suggestion, and I believe we're scheduled to vote on that this evening, has to do with basically raising pay by 50 cents an hour. Much of the meeting then went on to address bid recommendations, and there were many. Some were related to the district's 2024 referendum, and others were related to the budget of Mr. Fox for ongoing upgrades to our facilities. So one of those we addressed was the Emmeline Cook Windows bid recommendation, and you will have a chance to vote tonight on the lowest bidder, which was Cardinal Construction. My understanding is that the windows to be replaced were original windows to the building, which I believe opened in the 1950s. So I believe we have our money's worth out of those. We also had bid recommendations from our department for the Oakwood bid expansion and the Franklin bid expansion. We are recommending going with the lowest bids on each of those, and both of those will come through Fund 49, which is the referendum fund. We also were asked to approve a bid for asbestos abatement in several buildings, and the lowest bidder will be recommended tonight, which is Dirty Ducks Cleaning and Environment, with a bid of over $500,000. Part of this will be covered through referendum, since it impacts several of the buildings that are having additions, and some will come from Fund 46, and others from other funds will come from Fund 10, which is the general fund. We also talked about accepting a bid for the North High School gymnasium floor replacement. This, you may remember, is because of a polyurethane issue. Did I get that right, Mr. Fox? Urethane, thank you. Issue with the product underneath the current floor, so that floor needs to be removed, and that product, the urethane, needs to be removed to make sure we're providing a safe environment there. Finally, we talked about air conditioning bid recommendations for the 3 schools that were named in the referendum of 2024 to receive air conditioning, and those would be Lakeside, Reed, and Emmeline Cook. This, again, comes out of the referendum project, and we're recommending Gartman Mechanical. We had another agenda item that dealt with hiring an outside entity to manage our substitute teaching issues, not only substitutes for teachers, but also for paras, and the decision was to lay that forward to a future meeting in order to get more information. Our next meeting will be on March 12th, 2026.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, legislative?
I'll try to keep this short. We met yesterday morning, February 24th, 7:30 a.m. We discussed this. We got a CISA 6 legislative breakfast update that was attended by Dr. Davis, and I believe Dr. Herzog was there as
No,
well.
I was not at that
Or
one.
Dr. Herzog wasn't at that one. And they discussed a math version of Act 20 and how that might look differently from a reading version. We discussed if there'll be extra funding ever in the future for special education. And then we discussed some other legislative efforts that may or may not happen from the state legislature. And that is it in summation. We are going to meet again, or we canceled our March meeting. So the next meeting on the schedule is April 28th of this year.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your reports, and I think Dirty Ducks is a hilarious name. Okay, we have no one that has signed up this evening for agenda-related public forum or non-agenda-related public forum, so we will move into the workshop.
Okay, so tonight's workshop, I wanted to spend some time looking at the development of a revised strategic plan framework. And so in the staff report that you have seen tonight outlines what that development would be. I want to highlight a few things from a community standpoint as we're working through this from a staff report. Just so the community can work through just some of the questions that we've got in. And then I also want to spend some time just looking at our progression between our current strategic plan and some documents that we're proposing that we evolve to. So it'll be kind of a two-part, 2 or 3 part session tonight for our workshop. So first of all, I think it's important as we look at a transition into a new strategic framework for us to be able to do a little bit of a compare and contrast to what we have in our current strategic plan and what the proposed framework would be. And so this again is in the staff report, but just want to walk through a few things. So one of the fundamental shifts for us is looking at in our new strategic framework for that to be a 5-year framework. So typically districts would have maybe a 3 to 5 year goal setting or framework that they would do around, and then we'll still continue to do an annual plan that would be underneath that framework. So that's a way for us to be able to stay fresh with our strategies, with our reviews, and all of those types of things, which I think is a benefit to our current process, but also put that inside a larger framework. So we have goal setting. What I have proposed in our initial draft here would be 5 years. Some districts do 3 years to be able to keep it more concise. We can talk about that as we move forward, but that's an important process. One of the things that you'll see in the proposal is also that our goals will be explicitly stated on the framework and inside our annual plans. That's different than what we currently have in our strategic plan, and I think will be an ability for us to have more transparency directly to the work that we'll be doing and that we'll be responsible for to the community and that our staff will be working on. One of the key parts that has come up, and this was when Tim and Mike and Sam and I did some preliminary conversation just related to a framework, was that in our current strategic plan, we have quite a few things that are inputs versus outputs. And the idea of, again, a strategic plan is to be able to have outputs in the system, what the system is producing, to see if that's matching up with what you want for your vision and mission. The inputs are what are the plans that go into that work, which are still important, but wouldn't necessarily be indicators of success or health of the system. So that was another point that has been stressed in this framework. As I'm looking at other districts, along with looking at our work as we would evolve the system, another thing that comes up is just prioritization and staying focused. And so had many conversations recently with Hanover Research, who does strategic planning throughout the country, along with networking with some of my colleagues, superintendent colleagues from across the country, and just their development, and really getting us to prioritize down and reduce the number of key performance indicators that we have for our system, to be able to go deeper into those strategies. So we've currently been operating, anywhere between 19 and 20 key performance indicators. Ideally, we'd like to be able to get down to 5 or 8 or 10 KPIs across the system, and make sure that those would be indicators that we would look for towards health of the system as it would be producing. So really a reduction and a focus has been, and that's difficult to do. That'll be our difficult work as we're looking at it. And then also being able to identify not only strategies, but strategies with timelines. So what is the implementation of that? So those are some of the core, fundamental shifts between our current plan and our new framework that I would propose. Go ahead.
Can you give an example, just so I sometimes understand and sometimes don't? Can you give the example of and how our current strategic plan has inputs? And I guess I'm not, if you need to give an example of what an output would look like in alternative, that's fine. But I'm is there one of these that you can just kind of pull up to say why that's not as good of a tool?
Yes. So inputs for us, we would look at like a safety plan.
Okay.
Right, would be an example of an input. That's something that's essential for our work operationally, but having a safety plan doesn't necessarily mean you're safe, right? And so the if we want to prioritize a key performance indicator, an output on safety, it would be taking a measure of safety. So whether it was you'd look at maybe mod rate, or you'd look at incidents, or some other result, if you will, versus what the plan would be. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that would be. It's a good question.
Thank you.
So another. So just beyond that, another question that came up, and this is similar to, or this is connected to our previous meeting when we were looking at our future search process for community engagement, is how does our evolution of our framework fit within that community engagement process? And that's something that we've got some really good feedback on from community members, and specifically design team members that are putting together the future search event. So the recommendation is, and this I think is a wise move, is to make sure that if we want, and we do want, genuine, authentic communication to help inform what our eventual KPIs and our strategies would be, that when we're putting together this framework, we do it in a sequence that doesn't prioritize our KPIs or any strategies prior to that community engagement session. Which I think is an important move for us to make. So the plan from tonight is to be able to, let's look at an overview of the framework tonight, spend March and April working through different opportunities, a menu of KPIs that we could potentially use. I think some of the dynamics of the measures that Tim had brought up tonight, I think are important to explore. And so we can spend the next couple months looking at that. Our community engagement session then is at the end of April, so April 28th, 29th, and March 2nd. That will provide us with some prioritized themes of what the community is looking for us to do in the future, so over the next 10 years. And then I think what we can do is use those themes then to come back and say, of the KPIs that we had talked about, which ones are good matches for what the community is asking us to do that would be good indicators of our system as we're moving forward. And then we spend May and June being able to take a look at those themes and then do some prioritization around a set of key performance indicators that we think is a good reflection of what the community is asking for and what we know from our leadership inside the system. So the idea is that we would get ourselves to a June meeting where we've had the community input, we've explored KPIs, we've done the prioritization, and we could have a framework with KPIs that our staff can start to put together strategies for over the summer. So if we can land that in June, that sequence would fit very nicely. I think provides an opportunity for significant community involvement in the process and to be able to match up a prioritized list of KPIs. That gives us then our marching orders within the system to be able to move forward. Now, we know there's anchors like reading and math are going to be part of our KPIs, so it's not like we're starting from just zero, but it'll be really important for us to be able to hear from the community in that process. So I just wanted to outline that, and then this framework is what we'll be working through all of our, not only district, but our building strategic plans, annual plans on a page that we'll produce moving forward starting in August and September. So let me pause there. Those are just some of the questions that we had received from a community standpoint. So I just wanted to articulate like what the shift is going to be before we look at some of the documents and see if there's any questions on that. So if not, I want to be able to, I gave you, and these are posted online, but I printed them out because I think it's a little bit easier to be able to just look at them from a board standpoint when they're hard copies in front of us. Just to look at the evolution of like what our documents would look like. So if you take in the packet that I gave you, if you take the top 3 sheets, so there's going to be a little bit of like following directions here. So if you take the top 3 sheets specifically and put them out in front of you, so you'd have on the left-hand side, you'd have the sheet that looks like this. In the second page was Renewal 2031 was the title. And the third page would be the 5-year strategic framework external document. So if you just look at from left to right, if you look across those 3 documents, it shows, I think, an important progression for us and where we want to land. And I just want to provide that for a visual for us. So on the left-hand side would be our current strategic plan. Again, you can see our current key performance indicators, how we're rating those, and the percentages related to how we're evaluating that system. The second page, so in the middle that you're looking at, would be the draft that Tim and Mike and Sam and I had put together just related to potential KPIs that we could use that would be under 4 core areas, right? So there's some difference in the core areas. These are a menu of KPIs that I would advocate for us to be able to start to explore as potential options. But again, you know, the 17 KPIs here, we'd really like to be able to prioritize those down into, again, anywhere between 5 and 10 KPIs for the system as we would move forward. The final document on your right-hand side then is what I believe we should look at moving towards, and this is where you can see some more, I think, transparency and explicit goals and performance ratings that you'll see like for our system based on our KPIs. So if you take a look at that third sheet, what you'll see on the top would be similar with vision, mission, values, in core areas and the ratings. On the bottom, though, is a table that we could use that would outline what our KPIs are that we settle on, what a baseline measure is, and then what our, in this case, what our 5-year goal would be. So again, if we want to make this a 3-year framework, we could just make that 3 years out, whatever the board decides on that. Doesn't really matter. I think the format of this, though, allows us to be able to show explicit numbers and not have to translate star ratings and percentages and that type of thing like we're in now. Just should be much more clear for the community to be able to look at. If you take a look at that first line, which is TBD, because we're going to prioritize the KPIs after the community session. So what you'd have in that line would be the name of the key performance indicator, the baseline, and then once we would be done with the 2027 school year, so next school year, then we would have a result for that particular KPI. If we hit our mark, our annual goal for that KPI, then that would be green. So we'd have a green range, a yellow range if we made reasonable progress on it, but maybe fell short of the goal. And then we'd have red that we didn't make reasonable progress on it, and this is an area that we have to pour resources into. So part of our details are going to be, once we decide what our KPIs are going to be able to define what those ranges are going to be for our ratings. Because what this will produce on an annual basis is, what does the board believe the top indicators are for the health of our system? And you'll be able to look at this one page and say, across the board, like just by looking at the color coding, how did we do? Did we hit our marks or did we not hit our marks as we would move forward? If you get to a 3 to 5 year standpoint, you can see how that could work across the system. You'll be able to see some longitudinal trends on performance based on those most important measures as you would go. So when you would get to 2031, you'd be able to take a look at this dashboard, and this dashboard would be the same thing that you would be looking at for the 5th year in a row, because this wouldn't change, because we want to have that consistency, but you'd be able to track. I think this is a much better dashboard and way to be able to just communicate to the community, just in real raw numbers, what we would want to be able to display. So I wanted to just start with just a compare and contrast to, I think, where I would recommend that we would evolve to, and then just pause there and see if there's any feedback on that.
I really like the idea of having the community have input into those KPIs rather than have the board prioritize those and present those to the community. I think it would be better coming from the community. We'd have more input from a variety of sources, right, a variety of life experiences, so I really like that.
I would only comment on, I know we said that we don't list goals now, and I get that we say that we don't list goals, but also in our rating system that we have on our current strategic plan. I mean, we're always going towards that 5-star goal or the 5-star rating that we did have, like, these goals listed on there. So my only takeaway or suggestion at this point is that everyone needs to keep in mind, assuming we move towards this baseline and this idea of goal setting, that we need to give reasonable goals to, and that are appropriate for the KPI that we were looking at, because we did have goals. I don't necessarily agree with you that we didn't, but also, like, we saw it at the last meeting where it was an unreasonable 5-star thing to say the only way you get a 5-star rating is if you have like 3%, I'm making that up, I don't remember what it was, turnover for staff. It was not something that was ever going to be attainable, and we have that in a lot of things right now. Yes, we need to be aspirational, but we also have to be realistic, and it has to be within a standard in our industry for K-12 education.
That's the key words, that
Yeah.
has to be part of the standard in the industry.
Yeah, and just to clarify, just the goals, I was specifically referencing like the documents and the
Okay.
evolution of that. Yeah, we have had goals and set goals, but just like the display of it is what I was articulating.
I mean, you're right, it's not very obvious that the star rating
Yeah.
is the goal. You're
Yeah.
very right about that.
Just trying to make it,
Yeah.
easy in layman's terms as much as possible.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good feedback. Okay, so,
Dr. Hess.
oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think I'm going to go back to my one concern about this, I can appreciate why we want to get community feedback. My one concern is, and I go back to what you said, Dr. Davis, was we know math and reading achievement are going to be in there. We're educating kids, absolutely. I'm happy to listen to anybody in the community tell me why we shouldn't, but that's going to be in there, I believe. And what I struggle with is we had goals. We had in board policy for English language arts, we had goals. And we didn't achieve many of them. Some of them changed, so we couldn't measure against it anymore. And I'm just going, I do not understand. I believe we have to set some goals in math and reading right away that to sit here and, we know Valley Christian is now going to go build a new high school. That's our competition. They are actively going out and trying to get people away from us. And right now, we're going to be sitting here saying we don't even have targets for what we want to achieve in math and reading. And I that just doesn't sit well with me. And I think when we talked about accountability before, I think at one point Dr. Ford said something to the effect of, how can we look to hold Dr. Davis accountable when we don't have things for him to try to hit? And I'm going, well, you're right. It's going to have been over a year before we set an achievement goal. And I'm struggling because if we want to accomplish something, we can accomplish things very quickly. Like in December, we found out that, or December of '24, we found out that South Park couldn't be used. And in 3 weeks, we completely changed our referendum plan. So if we want to do something, we can, but we have chosen not to lay out goals in math and reading.
Can I ask a question?
You can always ask a question.
What would your proposal be on how we set that number? What that number would be?
Well,
I mean, because we can talk all day long about
absolutely.
But what's realistic and how.
I absolutely agree with you that many of the goals that we had set previously were just arbitrary numbers picked out.
They were.
I can absolutely justify from data, this is what other districts have done, this is what our sample size is, could lead to an ability to actually attain that. We can lay that out. I think we should have discussions with it in Education Committee and in Policy and Governance to get to it, but I'm just struggling with the idea of that element of it we're not going to proceed forward to until after the future search.
And I'm struggling with, in all reality, right, like what a realistic number or set of criteria is that shows if our teaching methods are being fully successful or not. Because there's so many variables. And I have kids in both systems. I understand public and private better than anybody. And I know they're different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they can be measured differently. So what I'm asking is, and we've talked for a long time, you've talked for a long time, I've talked for a long time, what methodology would you use that would be fair?
And I think we've talked about this to some extent, that
Yeah.
we would have a forward-facing goal. I think our forward-facing goal has been 5%. If we went and looked at all the policies. I would advocate for, but I would bring data to try to justify this, that the forward-facing goal would be reduced down to 3% annually. But then I think we had a conversation about the forward-facing goal would be that, but then we would also have a caveat of, but we would also do a statistical regression model that would incorporate economics, racial things, all the other things that we know to impact it, so that we've got a forward-facing goal that we can tell everybody about, but we understand things change. So it would be something to that extent. We'll have future conversations, but I just wanted to say that to make clear that it isn't just some arbitrary thing, and it acknowledges potentially changing environment in the district. That there can be reasons why we don't forward-facing see that, and there are changes in the numbers, but there are also analytical ways to tease that out, and we want to give staff the ability to say they succeeded without having the forward-facing number change.
Because I would love to have a measure that we could all agree on.
I just want to point out, we are not working in a vacuum currently. Our staff very clearly knows, and it's not fair for us to be saying that we don't have goals or expectations. I mean, we just had a 45-minute discussion about iReady results. That we are not in the Wild West here where there is no accountability happening. I will grant Dr. Ford's discussion that it hasn't always been clear exactly, and to your point, exactly what the goal is. However, our staff has made it very clear that they know, at a minimum, they are working towards getting kids to proficiency. And yes, it's defined slightly differently, and yes, we're very far away from that, but I don't want to leave any impression in our community that whatever's happening at this board table does not mean that the hard work is not happening in the classrooms.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Mrs. Smeltnick. I was going to add to that, but you were so eloquent, I'm not sure that my comments will be meaningful. But we do have a strategic plan that we adopted in February of 2025. And within the learning and academics area, core area, we have math achievement and reading achievement. So until this is replaced with some other strategic plan, these are our goals. We do have goals. We are not goalless. We are not adrift. We have goals. And if you were in the recent meeting I was with the elementary teachers, you would understand that they sense urgency, they sense frustration, that they're not able to move students along as quickly as they would like and bring them back to grade level. So we have goals out there. The teachers are well aware of the need to make improvement, especially in math and reading.
No, what I like about the direction we're moving in is the difference between having a large, in a large bureaucracy, having tons of people doing really good things, but they're doing it in different directions. We're not aligned. This is about a board discussion, about us having a dashboard that is exactly what we expect as a board, exactly how we're going to hold our lone employee accountable, gives him the guidance and empowerment to hold his people accountable. I mean, I think that is ultimately what we're trying to get at here. And I guess a question for you, Dr. Davis, and to Dr. Hess's point, I mean, I assume over the summer is when those conversations are happening with staff about what realistic goals are. I mean, aren't we engaging in that over the summer?
Yeah, I mean, we engage in that process. I mean, this is summertime is sometimes limited when you can get people together, but like what I would like to do, I think the springtime is going to be a good opportunity for us to do that analysis. I'd like to land like when we get to June, because the summer is better for like strategy, right? Like what are the actions that we can take, start the professional development and that type of thing. And I think nothing stands in our way, from a board standpoint. If we want to be able to start, if we want to just say math and reading are going to be our priorities and we want to start that work, I'm all in. Like that's not an issue. That's not an issue for me. I just want to make sure that we're not saying, here are 8 priorities, and then going to the community and saying, tell us what the themes you'd like us to work on, because that's the feedback that we've gotten that would be disingenuous. So that's what we want to protect against. But if there's fundamental work, that's something that, Dr. Coleman and I would be happy to, continue to be able to work on it.
I like that. I'd also suggest if Dr. Hess does come up with a comprehensive regression model, that I get to stand next to him during a press conference where we attempt to explain it to the public and they all fall asleep and hurl things at us. But in seriousness, right, it's about finding that balance between something that our public can look at, we can look at, staff can look at, and it resonates across all those levels.
Right.
It doesn't prevent us from doing more sophisticated things to inform practice, because, to all of your points, I'm describing it in a much more boring way, but yes, we all know things going on outside the classroom have a heck of a lot of an impact on what those outcomes are, and we have to keep that in mind.
Okay.
One other comment, kind of in reference to what Dr. Herzog was saying, that we do have a strategic plan, and I think I brought this up when we had meetings with Dr. Coleman and Dr. Davis and Dr. Ford, I think there needs to be continuity, that just because we are working on a new plan doesn't mean we do have this. And so roughly, me going back and looking at past reports, it seems like roughly in the February timeframe, this is when this board looks at this. So one, I would request that we see kind of a summative report of our strategic plan for this last year. Where are we at? And then I think the other thing that I asked when we were having conversations is I would at least like to see it for one more year, because I don't want to just completely give this up. We can come up with new goals, but we've got a year in between here now without something apparently, so we need to kind of keep this for one more year just to keep tabs on, this is what we said we were going to do. It shouldn't instantaneously frame out to the new analysis, the new strategic plan. That's my request.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. Anything else that you have for this evening?
I do.
Okay.
So, and I don't want to make this too much longer, but I also want to be able to, like with the board, as you would look at, if you take the top 2 pages, if you take these 2 pages and put them up in front of you, and then take the next 2 pages. So essentially, the 5-year framework that looks like this, the plan on a page, which looks like this, and then the strategy initiative step diagram, which would be the last page. Are you tracking on that? So the thought process is I wanted to show the first section to be able to understand the transition from where we are right now to where I think my recommendation is. These documents that are in front of you from left to right then talk about what would be forward-facing as we would get into next year. So again, if we want to run parallel plans, we can talk through that. But I want to make sure that we have some front-facing documents. So what left to right, what this would look like is we would have a 5-year strategic framework, which would be maintained and updated every year. The middle sheet would be our plan on a page, which would be the annual plan on a page, which introduces the annual goals. So that explicitly has annual goals that the framework does not. And it also identifies what are some initiatives that we're working on, to the point of, it's great to set goals, but what are you doing about it? Like, we would prioritize from a district standpoint 3 to 5 initiatives that we're working on. And then the document on the right-hand side then would be a step diagram that we'd work through that essentially would put a timeline together on when those strategies can be anticipated to be worked on throughout the year, through the 12 months of a year. So what I would recommend, and we can talk about this more as we move forward, is that these are 3 documents that on an annual basis would be front-facing, that would allow us to see a longitudinal 5-year framework and what our goals are, a 1-year plan on a page, what our annual goals are, and then our strategic initiatives, which really at a high level outlines the work that we'll do on a monthly basis to accomplish those annual goals to reach our 5-year marks. So there should be a thread. What I'm trying to articulate is a thread that goes between these documents, and important that we would have that, I think, at a district level, and then also each building, each school would also have an outline of what their 5-year outlook is, what their annual goals are, and then what strategies they're working on at a building level. So these would be, I think, ways to be able to communicate better transparency to the community. So that's just, I wanted to be able to present that to you as like a next phase.
What do you all need? How much direction do you need from us tonight? I mean, like, what do you need?
Direction tonight, just questions, and if you see some inconsistencies or something doesn't quite make sense, either tonight or we can talk, as we're moving throughout the next couple weeks. Really just to set, this framework, don't need a decision on anything. The next points for us, or next work for us, is going to be looking at a potential set of KPIs that we would just set inside of this framework. But I wanted to be able to set the framework together because it is different than what we have right now. But I believe it is more transparent, more reflective of best practices across the country, just related to strategic planning.
I have a question. This says district external document, what I heard you say is, this may be for the district, but every school would have their own core areas or key performance indicators that they're working on?
So there would be alignment. So what each building would have would be their plan on a page that would have the vision, mission, and values for the district.
Yes.
And then we would have like a set of indicators, like for elementary schools, would have the same set of key performance indicators. Those indicators at a building level would feed up into the district KPIs. So there needs to be alignment between those two. likely at a building level, they wouldn't have all of the district KPIs. There might be something like fund balance, for example, might be an indicator that we'd have at a district level that wouldn't make sense at a building level. But certainly the academic achievement aspects would. So once we start sorting through that, that might become a little bit more clear.
I could. Dr. Ford,
Yeah.
since this is what you do for a living, right? And
Yeah.
you've talked extensively about how we need more defined, goals and objectives.
Yeah.
What is your thought process on where we need to go from here and how we get to being a high-performing district in this area? based
Yeah,
on-
I mean, the most consistent finding is it's about us all buying into whatever we agree upon and successfully communicating it. It's about, I compare it to a giant game of telephone. We're trying to give guidance to Dr. Davis. He's trying to pass that guidance on to his principals. They're trying to pass it on to their teachers. They're trying to pass it on to their students. If you ever play telephone, right, it can break down if there's too much noise, someone's trying to screw it up, people don't buy into the game, don't want to play it, right? This is a pretty, I guess, juvenile example. But there's all kinds of ways that can get screwed up. But if you don't get the foundation right, and that's us, that we agree upon what we're measuring and why it matters, we're not going to get there. So I think the most important thing is this foundational step, not necessarily what the specific indicators are. I agree with Dr. Hess that, reading and math, there's things that we can't afford not to be looking at. But it's really up to the community, us to listen to the community, figure out what we want to have, make it manageable, give some clarity, and then sticking with it. I know we'll have the discussion about a 3 or 5 year plan. I always like the idea of a 5-year plan because education's a cumulative exercise. And we've had consistent critiques in this district that we change things too often. Hurts our teachers being able to commit to it, hurts our students because it's changing the way we talk about things, the way we teach things. So I think having 5 years makes a lot of sense. But bottom line is making sure that we're on the same page, that we actually commit to it, and that we see it through.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, is that really all you have?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah, no, it really is. So that's helpful. I appreciate the questions. Again, in the timeline for us as we go through March and April to be able to start to bring a menu of potential key performance indicators. I think I heard tonight being able to prioritize some math and reading, and maybe we can start to get at what those metrics are to be able to give us a little bit of an advanced start. So we can, because again, we want to be able to land in June with a new framework and with some assigned KPIs. So thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it.
I'm very excited about this, and back to Oshkosh for Education, when we went to the community and asked them what they wanted to see, and I think that was very successful for a number of years, and it's time we do it again. So I'm very happy that we are going to the community to reinforce the decisions that we make here. And now moving into consent resolution agenda. Board's been furnished with background material. Board member like to discuss any item that will be pulled. I understand there are some items to be pulled this evening, and what will those be?
I have changed my mind since the Facilities and Finance report pointed out what we would be voting on in terms of what was part of the referendum and what was part of Fund 10 and Fund 46. And so I'm not looking to pull anything this evening. I just think it's important to be open and transparent, and I think the Facilities and Finance report spoke for itself in terms of what was on the agenda that we would be voting on from that committee.
Okay, thank you.
Can we pull go ahead, Tim, I'm sorry.
Oh, you go ahead.
I was going to say, can we pull number 11 in
Yes,
accordance with the?
we can.
Yeah.
Table that.
Could, let's pull number 6, just so we have something that's a referendum, and I would like somebody to at least talk to the numbers a bit.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so in order to do this, we've got more than one being pulled.
Yes.
Can we have the motion for number 11, motion made by Ford, seconded by?
DeWitt. I just made that up.
Motion?
And the motion, so then we'll.
We don't need motions to pull consent.
Yes, we do. For out of a consent resolution, you do.
No.
I thought that
Yes.
we changed it.
In order to rearrange an agenda, you don't. But in order to pull something from consent and move it to individual, you do.
Because then you vote on it separately.
Yeah, I'm reading this right here in the wording that the president could read.
I would be happy to. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or as discussed at a previous meeting. These will be acted on upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member would like to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and voted on separately. No board vote is needed at this point to move resolutions from consent agenda to individually considered. Okay, so it appeared that we do not need to have motions on those, so we have pulled number 6 and pulled number 11.
Mhm.
Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved, Barb.
Yep.
Second, Mike.
Thank you for that.
You missed out on your second, Kelly.
That's all right.
I saw her winding up.
So we have Wyman for the consent agenda.
Oh, aye. Aye, sorry.
DeWitt.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Smeltney.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Consent agenda carries.
Thank you. And now we have number 6. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second, Kelly.
Discussion.
Well, I pulled this in part just because I felt like it would be nice for the community to see these are referendum projects we laid out. So maybe I should have pulled all of them, but for efficiency, I'm hoping you guys would be willing to give us, you prepared this kind of a, here's what we said in the referendum, here's where we're at, and so if you guys could summarize that for a little bit, that would be spectacular.
Yeah, I can start. Jim Fox, our project manager, did the brunt of the work on this and probably can speak, definitely can speak more intelligently to all of this than I can. But you can see on the top line is the referendum budget amount from April of '25. The next line down is the general contractor. Keep in mind that Myron has been approved. The other 3 listed there are what you're looking at for approval tonight. So those are not final yet. That's what you'll be voting on tonight. The general contractor bid amount, you can see is the bid we have received. Then you have the equipment pre-purchase. Jim, do you want to touch base on the air conditioner piece?
Certainly. The air conditioning for 3 elementary schools, if you recall, we handled that in a different manner than we typically would other projects. We did an OASD pre-purchase because we knew going into the summer for air conditioning projects that there would be some long lead time items. If we were to award contract at this point today and had that contractor buy the equipment necessary for that project, we would never get the installation done this summer. So we did write an RFP. We had a competitive bid process. We brought it through Facilities and Finance to the full board for approval for the amount that you see at $339,319. That covered the air conditioning units for the 3 elementary schools, Lakeside, Reed, and Emily Cook, as well as electrical panels that were long lead time. Then the bid before you today is the actual labor side. That'll be installing the air conditioning and the actual electrical work.
So the next line you have is projected soft costs. Soft costs can include but are not limited to things like the playground, the port in place, construction contingency, engineering and architectural fees, materials, soil removals, land survey, and a host of other potential pieces. That is your soft costs. Again, those are projections based on what we projected at the start of the referendum project. So you can see the Carl Traeger addition trending over, Franklin trending over, Oakwood under, and our air conditioning project under. So on the bottom, you'll see budgeted values. If we took that top line of the referendum budget amount, the 74 million plus, and then where we're actually at of our sum of values to date. Again, keep in mind the soft cost projections, we're at 72, so we're in the positive 2 million plus at the moment with those projects, knowing that we have approximately $122 million left in projects coming up.
So this provides a dipstick at this point in time about where we're at, just a high level perspective. So thank you guys for putting that together.
But, yes, thank you. I think at this stage, we've approved everything except for the air conditioning, right?
Yes.
That was consent.
That's
so,
true.
But that's probably good, because I do all of a sudden see a question about the air conditioning. Do you have any idea? $1 million on soft costs to put in air conditioning seems a touch large. Do we have any idea what's in that? If you don't, I didn't ask you ahead of time, I'm okay with nothing, but. The Gartman Mechanical?
Yes, I know
projected
exactly what you're
soft
talking
costs?
about. I apologize, I was not prepared for that particular question. Okay, the general contractor bid amount was 2.6 for Gartman Mechanical. Soft costs were going to be the engineering, architectural, through MSA that we had leading up to all three projects, development of bid documents. There are some site conditions within that as well. And understand that the soft costs need to be refined. I imported the soft costs from the document that we shared to the community and to the full board when we went to referendum. So within all of those individual cells that indicate soft costs, there's a whole host of different items that Brian had just indicated that we now need to go through and refine. So that real number of that number of $1,057,000 for soft costs, by the time we're done with that project, it's going to change. So understand that right now encompasses all of those different engineering, architectural, permitting fees, all those other things that are not part of a hard bid that you see at the 2.614 and the $339,000. But some of those are allowances, some of those are estimated numbers that need to be refined once we get into that project. And once we get into that actual project, we will be working on those number refinements, and we'll see that value change and be able to share that information.
And those are at 3 different sites, right? The air conditioning.
Correct.
Air conditioning project, so it's, it's a little bit different.
Correct. So if we start to really break that down to about 300,000 or so per site.
And also, just as a clarification for the community, if there are material changes, like if you had seen something that was out of line with what had been approved with the referendum, when you even get your general contractors, or say soft costs change significantly with, I'm making, like, obviously tariffs, things like that could change expected costs. That then goes through facility and finance, at least as a understanding to us of this. And if it's a very material change, it requires a vote of the board as well, right? If things get out of budget.
Yeah, by and large, the material costs are all buried within the hard bid from the contractors.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I mean,
So
we're
we know
not,
at this point.
the project doesn't jeopardize in that manner.
Correct.
But to your point, we would bring things to facilities and finance, and we could go through the soft cost itemized list if we wanted to get into the weeds on those things. And there are some items we won't be able to know until they put a shovel in the ground and can tell us if our soil is contaminated or how many loads of dirt they have to take in and out. So there are a lot of variables. We're happy at the moment that we're +2.
Dr. Hess?
I mean, at the moment, we have only approved here and are about to approve the general contracting bid.
Yeah.
I guess that does kind of raise a question, though. Do those soft costs ever come back to us? Do they need to come back to us? I mean, those are large dollar figures. I know, like, probably the architectural stuff is already part of a contract that we've approved.
Correct.
So we can't go back on that, but I guess I never really thought of, should we be seeing those large dollar figure soft costs coming back to us? I'm not suggesting one way or another. I'm just kind of having some wonderings in my head right now that I'm vocalizing. So
They've already really been approved as part of the overall referendum package. When we look at each individual building, again, the soft costs are, we mentioned, I can't see them on the board now, but when we start to take in the total costs of furniture, for example, and soils and architectural fees, engineering fees. There's a lot of different fees. There are a lot of different allowances. So those were all baked into the overall budget projections for each individual building. Again, not to repeat myself, but as we process through the overall construction of a Carl Traeger addition, which we're getting ready to start in the month of March, we're going to start to see those allowances consumed, and then we can start to update in real time what those total soft costs are going to look like. And to your point, Tim, some of those things we can point out pretty quickly. I mean, the architectural fees are a fixed number that are directly connected to the general contractor's fees. So those things are reasonably set. A lot of the other costs are not. They're just budgetary at this point.
I can give you one example, just looking at Traeger, $900,000 for the playground and board in place pad, $80,000 for furnishings, $30,000 for the upgrade and technology that'll take place. Your 1.6 comes pretty quick with some of those pieces. So we'll be able to have an itemized list as we process through these projects to come and show facilities and finance, and if they require us to bring it back here, that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Call the roll.
DeWitt. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Smeltley.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. And number 11, EduStaff Substitute Coordination Services Transition. Is there a motion?
Move to table, correct?
Yes.
Yep, move to table.
Second, Barb.
Just for the public, this is one that we discussed at Facilities and Finance, and it was brought up by Dr. Hess and Dr. Herzog. I believe you both raised this concern, that we only had one bid, if we even went out to bid, so we got to make sure we're following our proper processes and send it out to bid.
Call the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Smeltley.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
DeWitt. Aye. Motion to table carries.
Thank you. Request for any future items for committee review?
I guess only my ask of being able to fulfill my obligation of accountability and seeing the report of the strategic plan for this year.
Okay. Announcements, I have one, now that we are well into the second semester. School visits, your second school visit, if you could put that on your calendar, that'd be fantastic. We like to have those done by spring break, or at least around that time. We will now be adjourning to executive session, where we'll be considering the disciplinary data of a specific person and review expulsion recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Barb.
All right, Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Smeltley.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
DeWitt. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned to executive session.
Thank you.